Okay, so the reason we're going to use Houdini is because we want to be able to process the geometry in a consistent fashion. So uh, at the studios where I've worked, I've made tools to make this easier, but we can do this manually. Um, so I have exported. Let me just save this. Documents. Faster shading. Okay, and now I exported the pots. I hope it worked. Okay, there's one pot. And two pot. This is where you. Uh-oh. Pot 2 didn't export properly. Pot 3. I just grabbed these from Kitbash. Remember alt drag is your friend. Okay, now we've got our pots. And now we can merge these together. So if you select them all, we can merge them. And now we've got all the stuff merged together, sitting on top of each other. And the painful part is now we got to put a transform in here. Now, what's one thing you like to do in Substance sometimes? To make your life easier. You have a symmetrical object. Yeah, so you got symmetry tools. They work really great. So if you have some symmetrical objects, how do you want to line your objects up? At the origin and vertically. I've made giant stacks of things. It hasn't caused trouble. And so we could do that. And we're just going to... This is where scripting becomes useful, because you can script this process and look at the bounding box of things. Or maybe there's even a Houdini way to do it, but we want to manually do this so that it is reproducible. Because when modeling changes one of these, we want everything to be the same. All the transforms we want to be the same. Okay. If I haven't told you already, the automatic connection thing is handy, but when you have a complicated network, it can be perilous because you might accidentally connect something where you didn't mean to, and if you don't notice, then it could break your whole setup. So if you turn off allow dropping on wires, you can then hold down 8 and drop it. So if I duplicate this, if I put it over here, nothing will happen, right? But if I hold down the 8 key, it'll connect it. It's not as convenient in some ways, but it's safer. Okay. So now we've got all of our objects. We can make this look tidy.
What key do you hold when you...
Hold down the A key, just think A for a line.
Of course it's 8 for a line.
And then you can do things like this.
Like W for wireframe.
That would be automatic.
Which doesn't always look that pretty.
But sometimes you just want control and you want to be able to snap things. So now we're going to go through and move things. Symmetry is not super important for these, so I'm not going to do these symmetrically, but if I was doing symmetrical objects, I would stack them all. So for this, I'm just going to start sliding them over.
You were still like separating them, but doing it in the y-axis?
Yeah, I'm going to separate them this way. Let's see, separate. And this takes a minute, and maybe it's tedious, but that's okay. You want to keep things so they're not so close that they're going to like run into each other with your occlusion pass, because you want to be able to bake occlusion. And you can, like, there's things you can do to make sure they only compute occlusion with each other, but sometimes it's good just to think proactively. Trying to make your life easier for yourself. So I'm going to move this one up. I'm going to make a nice little grid of these. So you can select multiple, and if they have the same parameter, you can edit them all at the same time. So I'm just going to move this one over. Probably. Sorry for making you watch me dry paint. Okay, so we got 4 and we got 3, right? And we might even be able to do a little like group offset thing. Make those a little higher. Let's see.
There are 6 objects in there and then 7 in.
Wasn't there one more?
There was one there.
1, 2, 3, 4. There's only 6 because the 7th one I didn't export correctly. However, okay, so let's say I have these things set up like this. Let's see, you. Okay. I'm just gonna put him here. Okay. I'm gonna leave a space for the missing one. Okay, things are good. Now, another thing you can do here is you can subdivide this. Who's run into problems so far or seen problems where your textures are doing weird things at the edges? Okay, so part of that is that you have painted an object that isn't subdivided correctly. So the way you painted it doesn't match the way it gets rendered when it's rendered as a subdiv. So if you're going to be rendering these as subdivs, let's do wired shaded. And, oh, okay. One more annoying thing. Let's see. These are, right now, these are all packed. So we're going to go and load as unpacked Alembic. Okay, so now they're geometry. I think, yeah. Okay, so now we can see their mesh. We can see the polygon sizes. And if we were going to render this if we're doing this for a real-time thing, we'd be good to go. If we're going to render this as a sub-D, we might want to subdivide it first. So we can just run the subdivide SOP on here. And now we can make sure we have enough subdivisions that when we go and render this in RenderMan, we're not going to get any weird stretching or things happening at the boundaries of our geometry. You want to watch out for that. I have seen that artifact. It's caused some havoc on Bobo a few times. So now it's subdivided. That means the UVs are going to be correct based on how the geometry is. And those are some pretty wacky UVs, but I didn't make them, so we're good. Like, why would you do that? I mean, seriously. Who's embarrassed for the person to unwrap that?
We should send them an email right now.
You are so right.
I am embarrassed for you.
Okay, now, so we got a bunch of geometry loaded. And this is where I didn't get a chance to test this out. But we can export this. You can do this as a USD or an Alembic. Habit makes me want to do Alembic files. And it's sad because, okay. This is where I'm not running the educational version right now, so I'm restricted. Let's hope that this works and I'm not like exceeding my poly count.
We can get you a educational lesson.
Yeah, I need to get that set up. I've tried unsuccessfully. Okay, so now we're going to cross our fingers and read file, write file. Okay. And it's probably gonna. Oh no, we're good. We're good. Okay. Now this next step is where things get a little bit troublesome, because if you want to treat these all like the same object, they need to be all merged into the same UDIM space. If you want to treat them like separate objects, then you need to make sure there's a separate material assigned to each one. So we're going to load this and see what happens, and then we're going to make changes. So file new, OpenGL, select our model, documents. Okay, did I?
You need to put if at the beginning of that geometry file.
There.
Chris, did you have the question?
Yeah. This one?
Yeah, do you need
Oh, you bet I do. Thanks. Okay, saving the file. Okay. Now paint it. We don't need to do any. We're gonna just use all the defaults, and we're gonna see what happens when we load this. It's failing to load. This is what I get for not testing this beforehand. And where do we look when things fail?
To the heavens? Sorry.
Definitely. We also pop open the log and see what it says. Errors have been found. Okay, we've got lousy UVs. So now we look at the assets and see, oh my goodness.
Oh my god.
That's why you can't.
Okay. So realistically, I would re-export these UVs for each one. Right now, we're just gonna do a quick fix on these things.
So when you say you would export them for each one, you mean you would go into Maya and just fix them?
Yeah, yeah. UV layout. Maximum, no rotation. Back into UDIM tiles. Method, range. Okay, why is this not working? Now I'm embarrassed for not having worked harder. Fixed size, no rotation. Okay, it doesn't like poly soups. Maximum size, pack it in the UDIM. We can enable some rotation. This is not going to be ideal, but this will get us through. Okay. Oh. Select all of you. No poly soups. Okay. Okay, so we're still going to have a problem when we run this, because it's not going to have an individual material on each one of these things. But let's go ahead and see what happens. Okay, I've got my scene loaded. Now, I have this problem because all of them have the same material and they're all sitting on top of each other. So if I try to paint something on here, it will go on all of them because they're all sitting on top of each other and they're overlapping. So there's some things we can do. One of them would require more work on your part. For example, if you wanted them to all behave as exactly the same model, you could change their UV so none of them are sitting on top of each other, and you could paint it all as one. That requires work to then unfold those changes and put the textures back where they need to be. So instead, we're just going to make sure we have a material assigned to each one, which I'm not sure. We're going to just pause it really quickly while we figure this one out. I hope that I'm not being foolish. Okay, so the thing about object files, OBJs, is that you can look at them. And so an OBJ file usually consists of a OBJ and a .mat file. And I don't have a mat file, so either it didn't actually compute the export or it didn't work. Okay, so imagine that I had materials. I'm going to shortcut this because you don't want to sit around and watch me do this. And then I will fix it. No. And there. Okay, just so we can work on this. Go into Substance, and now we're just going to go into Edit and re-import the mesh. Now everything is happier. And, oh, the material did come through. Okay, so that was fine. And Scott, one. Okay, things are slow, so we're just going to go to manual. That's 3. Okay. Just going to re-import our mesh. And now we have a material for each one of these things. Okay, so now how do we get things going? Let's start with this jar right here. And okay, we're going to start with 4. And so now I'm going to start figuring out what these are going to look like. And so I'm just going to start figuring out how I want this to work. So I'm going to make a smart material. You guys know how to make smart materials? You group them in a folder. And I'm just going to create a smart material. And now I can go through, make sure everything is visible again. And see how there's these things. Remember, when you change material names, you will lose whatever is not attached. So if you go and edit your model, change the material, reload it, and you didn't keep the materials the same, then you need to revert and fix it. Or take your original data, make a smart material out of it, and then load the model and then put your smart material back on. It'll preserve everything as was, but it'll allow you to get through that unpleasantness. So now we can go through and stick our smart material on everything. So, and then we can go and start refining each individual one of these things. Right? Let's see. So if I want this vase, let's say we're going to edit number 6. So like having individual materials is fine. It requires a little bit more work to manage things, but it's still good. So now we can change our base color on each one of these things. And another thing that might be helpful to you is there's also this notion of cloned materials. So let's make another group here, and we will call it, I don't know, test. Because let's say there's something you want to be the same across everything. So we are going to copy this. Copy layers. And now we're going to go to our other object. Okay. And we are going to right click and we're going to paste. Paste as layer instance. Okay. Now layer instances are handy. We can add a black mask to a layer instance. And let's say we want this just to apply to this liddy bit. Okay. And we go back to our original one, which was on number 4. And so, no, it wasn't. Just got to remember where it came from. Okay. And we're going to do the same thing, except in here we need to group it and add our black mask outside of the part that we're cloning. So we're going to do the same thing. And, oh, 6. Which one is 6? Yeah. There we go. Okay, so now we can edit this fill layer here, and the results will be shared across any instance. So smart materials are good because you can make a setup and share it amongst all your things. Instances are good because you can make a setup and then edit all of them simultaneously. Back before we had UDIM support in Substance Painter, this is how we dealt with the lack of UDIMs. We would set up the material and then instance paste it on everything that needed to share that across all the UDIMs. It was terrible, but it was still better than Mari, so we did it anyway.
Chris, quick question.
Yep.
Can you create a smart map with instances inside of it? Or a smart material?
A smart
With instance layers inside of it?
No.
Yeah, it's something that all the smart materials will show, so if you change it on one, it changes in all the other ones.
No.
But, no?
Smart materials don't work that way, because smart materials are just a packaging and ability to reuse it. One thing to do, so let's say you put down a smart material on everything. And if you set your smart material up right, you will set your base color in a conspicuous and easy to locate location. And remember that in Substance, a anchor doesn't have to be visible. So if you want to make a fill layer, that's only purpose is to set the color that you're going to then use in other places in the network, then you can change that, and I think you could probably even like clone in a color if you wanted to, but ideally you just make it easy to edit the colors on your smart materials, and then if you want to reuse a smart material elsewhere, then you instance it. So, you know, I'm adding some texture. This isn't necessarily the best way to do it, but I'm just trying to get it done quickly. So now you've got all your objects, you're happy with the results, and now you need to export them. So this is where you need to be like strategic about how you work with your names or your locations. So if you're doing a system where you're post-processing the textures to put them where they need to be, then you just need to make sure all the files go into a unique spot. If you want them to all go into a specific folder, but you want to keep their names, you might need to do something fancy, like let's say I've got my export preset. I'm going to duplicate this, and I'm going to use so there's a texture set variable here. So if I want to put all my files into a texture set / color directory, I can do that. So now I'm going to select my preset I just made, which I should have named. And I'm just going to export them, you know, at 1K, and I'm going to put them in a location. So now I've exported them, and now I've got a folder for each material, and then all the file names are exactly the same. It's more convenient to have your file names have a consistent name because you can deal with the directory more easily. Or if you have an automatic system and you're like putting your files into the right location, at Pixar, I just leveraged the file names, or like the material names. I put the object name and the material name, and then I just made my export preset so that it would put it in the right folder based on our hierarchy, which is a little bit of a hack, but it was totally functional. And so then if we were to go back to Houdini now, we can then start setting up our materials. Let's try this. So let's go to our stage. Let's see, sublayer. And I might be able to grab the Alembic file, let's see. Okay. Oh, I don't have RenderMan in here. So we just go into our material library, and we'd have to do a Karma material builder because I don't have the other thing going on. And then I know nothing of Karma textures. So we could go to our textures folder, and this was pot number 1, I think. So I'm just going to grab my assets from number 1. And going to cross our fingers that I've got things right. Okay, and then I'm loading my textures. And this way you can duplicate your textures and you just have to change the file paths. And if you use an expression, then you can make your life easier. Okay, questions?
I know you already said this, but why did you make each pot a separate material again? Just that you can go
Oh,
in.
because in Substance Painter, either things can, so if we look at our UVs, either everything can be in a unique space and they can all live as the same object and the same material, and then you've got to be able to like fix your UVs. Well, okay. If everything is living in a unique UDIM space and you save out all your assets that way, then you could use the same material and everything, and you could use the same material inputs, and it would just grab the right textures based on the UDIMs. So that would be one way to do it, but it might be a little chaotic. The other way is to separate things in Substance. You need a material assigned to each one if you want to treat them as individual objects. And so by adding the attribute in Houdini, I was able to set the material name explicitly so that when I load it in here, we can reference things as individual objects. And then I was able to leverage that for the file paths as well. So it just depends on what you need organizationally. If dumping all your files in the same folder is fine, that's one way to do it. If you can edit the UDIMs and you can put all the UDIMs in different spots, and then you can save your assets out in the required places, that still works because the UDIMs will reference the right tile regardless of whether or not it has neighbors. And so if you had done a UDIM layout with pots and pot 6 was over here, then if you export your textures and you put your pot 6 textures in your texture folder under pot 6, and then you just loaded, the UDIM for that, it would be fine. It would still load the right texture. But the file name allows you to differentiate these things in here, or the material name. Other questions? Yeah.
This assignment then, are we also doing pots, or?
I was thinking of just giving you guys all the pots and giving you the reference image and saying go for it.
Okay.
Um,
That works.
so yeah, that's my thought. And this is really just about like going through the process, setting up your file appropriately in Houdini, writing out your things. And the nice thing about this, like let's say I go into Blender and I now properly export pot number 2, which I think is okay. So one of these is pot 2. I don't know which, because I'm actually really confused about Houdini or Blender sometimes. But pot 2 didn't export, so I'm going to select it, and I'm going to re-export it. And see, pot 2 is empty. Export the alembic. Now if I go back to Houdini, and I go back to my object context, and I resolve to fix the missing pot 2. Okay, and okay, so there's pot 2. Now, if I do this right, and
It's not connected.
I merge this guy in here. Okay, there's pot 2, and just gonna go and change the transform for pot 2. Now, if I keep this within the bounding box of everything else, and I don't know why pot 2 is all the way over there. Okay. Change the material to 2. And if I go ahead and write this out again, and now if I go to substance, I can now re-import my mesh. And now here's pot 2. Safe and sound. Everything's in the right spot. And then if modeling goes and changes pot 2, oh, that's why. Okay. So if modeling changes pot 2, export spot 2, and now if I go back into Houdini, and I go up to pot 2, and I reload it. Did I not export? There. Now I can absorb those changes. There, yeah. Without breaking anything. So if I re-export this, which it should have already done because it's visualized, and I go back to Substance Painter and re-import my mesh. Now pot 2 is messed up, but everything is in the right position. And if I had, like, let's say I had moved all of these tops, because sometimes sometimes you need things to a little more clearance or something like that, and so you could do things like, I don't know if these things have names, but you could do something like selecting the connected meshes, select 3D connected geometry, or maybe they have names. Select by alembic path. Okay, good. Alembic paths are safer, although, okay, it looks like these things don't have individual paths. If the models were set up better, they would. Let's see, name attributes. Nope. Then we will do 3D connected geometry. So if you wanted to move all of these tops, this is a fragile way to do it. Oh. Yeah, this is a fragile way to do it because none of the point numbers can change or it'll break. But if you needed these things to not be connected, or you needed to explode something, again, if you need to load the model again, everything still transforms into the same spot, and so it stays consistent in Substance Painter, and everything keeps working. And so Houdini is a really good place for doing prep work for Substance. Whereas if you do stuff in Maya and you transform things, you got to make sure you recreate the same steps every single time, which is troublesome. And here we can make sure everything is subdivided so we don't get weird stretches. We can make sure things that if we did want to explode something, like if we wanted to move the mouth, like the teeth and the gums outside of the head so that we could bake those things correctly, then that's something we would do here. Other questions? No? Okay, great.